this week's episode, Questions of the Day host, Fanuel Muindi, talks with Meghan Groome, a senior vice president of education at the New York Academy of Sciences, where she manages a strategic portfolio of global education programs that spans primary school through early-stage faculty education programs. Meghan Groome is also an adjunct assistant professor at SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry, and has been the principal investigator and co-investigator on several NSF grants. Previously, she was at the School of the New York Times, and has held positions in education, policy, and government relations at several other organizations. She is a certified science teacher, and completed her bachelor's degree from Colorado College, where she majored in biology and theater. She earned her PhD in science education from Teachers College at Columbia University.
Larger portfolio, but we use service learning to design our actual experiences for the scientists. So the child is the...
Listen carefully as Dr. Groome provides an overview of some of the ongoing lessons being learned from the Academy's educational programs that leverage scientist volunteers to provide service learning benefits for the scientists involved, the students, and the teachers. Their overarching goal to provide engaging and high-quality STEM education at scale.
So, Meghan Groome, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks for coming all the way down here.
Yes. Quite a day. So you're a senior vice president for education at the New York Academy of Sciences, and you oversee a portfolio of educational programs that the Academy takes care of. Can you give us a sense of your theory of change around these programs? What is driving them?
So I'll say that I'm a science teacher by training, been an educator for over 20 years. The superpower of this particular organization is that we're a membership organization. So we have 20,000 members all over the world, and they are incredibly enthusiastic about education. And so every time we design a program, it's to take advantage of this incredible resource that we have, which are these scientists who really want to be part of the STEM education pipeline. So whether they are mentoring a group of high school kids doing a science fair project, or are out partnered with a teacher someplace in residence, our theory of change is that we can activate these thousands of people to go out, teach, mentor, work with teachers, students, and while they're doing it, they have something that they can learn themselves. So it's a collective impact model in terms of the larger portfolio, but we use service learning to design our actual experiences for the scientists. So the child is the beneficiary, the teacher is the beneficiary. But just today, I met with a MD, PhD candidate. She's working with a school out in Queens, and she was talking about how she was learning statistics because that's what she was teaching to this group of 11th graders. So we do use a service learning model because we think that you can learn better by doing something where you're leading both with your heart and your mind.
So scientists, when they come to that, what are their objectives?
Usually they come at it from I had a mentor, I want to give back, I want to do some sort of volunteer work. So usually they come at it from, I'm used to doing these sorts of things, I want to keep doing them. The service learning piece can be a little bit sneaky. We don't necessarily say, hey, come and learn how to teach, come and learn how to mentor. But we do typically take advantage of the fact that they want to do this. They're volunteering, they're not being forced to do it. And the fact that they learn something that we can quantify is a benefit more on the larger scale than on necessarily the individual scale. And it also means that the programs have to be fun, engaging. We can't make anybody spend 2 hours on the subway. We can't make them teach someone that they don't want to do. So it's also very user focused, which means that it's a pretty dynamic program in terms of how and what we're teaching and how we're working with the scientists themselves.
I see. And so when you say scientists, these are across the spectrum, right? Trainees.
They are, so they're cross-discipline, cross-sector, cross-border, and multi-generational. So someone graduates from our high school program, we try to recruit them to be a near peer mentor. Someone might be a retiree and they're giving back So we always say to the students, there's always somebody younger than you. Literally, there's always somebody younger than you, and you can share your passion for science with them.
Wow, wow. So do they, just think how these programs work, do they keep coming back? Yeah,
some of them do, yeah. So some of them, we have some mentors in our high school programs where they've been mentoring for 5 years, and they've mentored, at this point, hundreds of teams. Some of them just come in for 1 semester, and then some of, especially our teachers and our schools, so our programs where they're in residence, we've been working with those schools for 10 years, 12 years, something like that. So often, if we want to make sure the scientist has a really good experience, we'll send them to a site where we know they're going to have a great experience.
Yeah. You're talking about the scientist in residence
Yeah,
program,
that's
right?
our scientist in residence program.
Yeah. How long has that been going on?
So the first programs that we started here were the after school program, which is where we sent scientists into community-based organizations to do teaching and mentoring. Pretty quickly, the Department of Education wanted in on that. And so we expanded it out. So first they were starting with community-based organizations, and then you could also volunteer with teachers for a full school year. So it's still the same basic concept. The mechanics of the program are a little bit different, but you could be at a school, you could be at a library, you could be at a community-based organization.
So multiple access points, right? To get this in. So what are scientists telling you as they participate in these programs?
They are just having a good time. It's fun, it's engaging. And we had some research that came out from one of our NSF grants that showed that actually the happiness and the joy and that real sense of accomplishment that came with working with young people was a great sort of buoy or lift for the scientists when they were doing their research, which, as you know, takes a year, it takes 18 months to publish. So how much good news does the scientist get in 1 year? I'm not really sure. But if you add that sort of spike of working with kids that you're choosing to do, it's fun, it's engaging.
Almost like a shield, essentially. When the bad news comes in, the experiment doesn't work. Something,
Yeah. So I think that's a piece of it, but that's kind of the main thing that they get out of it. But we've measured things like, confidence in teaching, pedagogical skills. So we have measured those things, and it can be, you can learn everything from project management skills to pedagogical content knowledge, to science communication, to mentorship skills. It kind of depends on the placement in the program. But you learn what are thought of as, I think of as really, really boring, but key work-ready skills. Yeah,
because for your end, you want to know what's working, right? And that, hey, we're doing X because it's having Y impact, right? And so forth. So
and one of the things that we really struggle with is that we have had research funding before, but we are not chasing research questions. We have done that in the past, but our current work, we're really just trying to provide these programs that we know are very successful. And sometimes we kind of wander into partnership with researchers and put in a grant with them. But even organizations like ours, which have a well-developed fundraising team, I've been a PI on some grants before. Even for us, bridging that research practitioner gap is extremely challenging because we just are not designed like a research university.
Yeah, but I would push and say, but you're still asking questions though, right?
We are.
In a way that you're doing all this because there's a set of questions you want to address, right? For example, the family science nights and the after school STEM mentoring program, right? That's more on the kind of public engagement side of the equation.
So that's very focused on sort of what we used to call science for all, which was, we want to get all kids, all parents, anybody who's touching into this community-based organization, we want them to know that great STEM is happening there, and that it's going to be meaningful, it's going to be fun, and it's going to perhaps be, something that you're not getting in your school day. And so those programs really focus on any kid. We want any kid to walk in there and say, oh, this looks fun, I'm going to do this. And then for something like Family Science Night, we want the kid to really be able to show off what they've learned. So they bring their families and they come in and the scientists are there. And it's kind of like a big science festival, and the kids show off what they've learned. And it flips the dynamic. They're now the authority figure, and they're teaching their families about what they've been doing in STEM all semester. But again, that's really trying to get everybody excited and engaged and invested in the value of STEM education.
Yeah. So then if I frame that as a question, it would be like, how do we do this more effectively, right? What are we learning from this, right, that can help us do that?
Right. And some of the questions that we've answered and been thinking a lot about are really around scale. So we know from a program design what works and what gets kids and families engaged. What we think a lot about is, how do we get more kids, more families, more neighborhoods? How do we get more scientists engaged? And how do we do that efficiently in a way that is manageable by a small team here?
Yeah. I think part of the answer probably through partnerships, which I have a question
for
you about that. But then, so what is the challenge then for that? The scaling, right? Scale issue. What is the core thing that is preventing that? Outside funding.
Funding. So funding is the big challenge.
Sure.
And there has been, the last 2 administrations, STEM, there's these larger macro fads and stuff like that. STEM has been really big. So a lot of funding in STEM, a lot of political support for STEM, much less political support for STEM, just because of things that move towards work-based learning, moving towards just coming out of the pandemic and trying to repair our lives. So we're one of the only STEM providers who's still at scale in the city doing what we're doing. For the after school program, we partner with the Department of Youth and Community Development. So if you think about us as like a recruitment field into the world of science, they're kind of a recruitment partner into the networks of community-based organizations that they fund. So we kind of meet in the middle and match make together. And we solve problems, they solve problems. That's been a really great partnership that we've had for a long time.
Okay, so partnership, because this is, maybe funding is up there. I think partnership development is also probably up there as well. Right? How do you do this in a way that is beneficial, but also like capacity-wise, because you only have so many people, right? That can manage so many partnerships. What's your philosophy around that, or framework?
I think one of the pieces that's key is working with people who you want to work with and want to work with you. We have tried to do these programs. This is really early on, where you had to do them for credit, or it was part of a class, or it was a requirement or something like that. And so we would get people who just weren't that excited about working with middle school kids. And so I think
these are partners, organizations.
No, these are scientists.
Oh, these are scientists.
Yeah, or so I think if you as an individual are excited and enthusiastic and want to do this specific work, then that's a huge piece of the puzzle. From a partnership perspective, that's really around capacity, and is there the right fit for the initial fit of, we are filling a gap that you have, and we're here to provide capacity. And so if you don't have any STEM specialists on your staff, or your teachers are not interested in doing STEM, then the partnership isn't really going to work. So there has to be a reciprocity of needs, or sort of lock and key, where we have something that adds capacity to what you want to do. And that can come from the very top, from the assistant principal, from the executive director. But then it really has to work at the individual level.
And then trust comes in there as well, that you guys are aligned on the value system, right?
And I just want to say also that while we call them volunteers, especially our on the ground programs, in order to make sure that they're equitable, we do pay a stipend. We cover travel, we cover supplies, we cover training time. We offer them an honorarium
for the scientists,
and for the site staff, and for the teachers that we work with. Because what we found is that if we didn't offer an honorarium, we were only getting students from schools that had really well-resourced labs. And so we couldn't attract any CUNY students. We couldn't attract any SUNY students. We were only attracting people who didn't need essentially a part-time job. And so that piece of the puzzle, getting the incentives right, that's something that we have studied and looked at.
Like, again, you're approaching it like a scientist, right? That you have these questions you want to address. You can do little experiments and find out like what are the insights.
And we are interested in scale from a research perspective, from sort of the questions that we've asked, but we are very aware of our resources, our financial resources. But for me, we're also very aware of burnout, staff capacity, and sort of the reputation that nonprofits have of exchanging sort of sense of self-worth and mission for pay. So we really want to make sure that the people who are working here, who are doing that work, feel valued and also don't feel like they're having to sort of save the world if they don't get those extra 5 placements. So that's why we think a lot about the capacity piece and really what it takes. We did a jump from 25 sites to 50 sites, and that took significantly more resources to be able to do that, to make sure that we weren't burning people out.
Right.
Don't go away. The conversation will continue momentarily after this special highlight. Culturally Relevant Science is a US-based nonprofit organization dedicated to creating innovative, affordable, and inclusive STEM education for all students, especially those from underrepresented communities. Having served over 10,000 students and teachers, they believe that every student, regardless of how they identify, deserves to see themselves represented in STEM, so that their engagement, achievement, and pursuit of STEM careers will increase. Learn more by visiting their website at www.crsci.org. This special highlight was made possible by contributions from listeners and viewers like you. You can contribute by simply continuing to watch or listening to this conversation and becoming a subscriber to the Civic Sci TV network on YouTube. Now back to the conversation.
And from these lessons, are you publishing these somewhere? I imagine someone's listening to this, I would like to learn from that experience, 25 to 50, or some lessons learned from some of these programs. Are you publishing them? Or?
We're not. We don't have any capacity or bandwidth to really publish that. When we have research grants and we have funding that gives all of us time to write and think, and especially go to conferences, then we are more likely to publish it. Right now, we're working on a sort of blogs, social posts, trying to share that. I think like most organizations in the city, we're still really rebuilding from the pandemic and trying to figure out how to best take advantage of these new resources that we have post-pandemic. Just in terms of, I was in a class today and the kids now, every single one of them had Chromebooks, and the teacher and the scientist, everybody was really familiar and comfortable with Google Docs. And they were really pushing the limits of all of that because now they could. So we're also trying to take a breather and sort of see what works. And while we're sharing best practices through our network, we're not necessarily documenting it.
Yeah. Capacity, as you said,
Capacity.
Right? Yeah. So funders listen to this later. Should add that in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's really common for funders to not focus on measurement or an evaluation, or expect you to do evaluation or to do publications or to do dissemination of your work without funding it.
Yeah. That creates other challenges there.
Yeah.
I want to go back to, we talked about the scientists, right? And now the other side of the equation, the children and also the public at large, right? Yeah, families that come into stuff, right? What are they telling you from their experiences doing the program?
When we first started doing these programs, so these are our in-person programs, we were working in these youth development settings. And what was happening was there were some big shifts happening in that field. And so what we were hearing from parents was, I just want my kids to be safe. I just want them to have a snack. I want them to feel safe. This is an after-school program. Academic rigor doesn't really mean that much to me. I just want them to be in a place, and I have little kids, so I understand how important that stable childcare is after school. And as, especially New York City has ramped up expectations of rigor in the after-school programs, what we see and what we hear is I want my kids to do STEM. I want them to do STEM that helps them do well in the 4th grade exam. I want them to have fun. I want them to, feel like a scientist. I see a future in STEM for them. So I want them to have the best that they can have. And so we really see just a continual increase both in this is joyful, fun STEM, but also that it's rigorous, because a lot of, especially the younger kids, they don't have STEM in their, or they have they have the M part, but they don't have the STE part. So I feel like we really fill that gap, but we really want parents to say, that was so much fun. Oh, I love doing that. I'm going to choose to do that on a Saturday instead of doing, something else.
And do it again, right?
Yeah.
Come back.
And actually that becomes a problem with your program design, because if you have, someone who comes in 3rd grade and they come in spring semester, and then they're in 4th grade and they come in fall semester, and then they come in spring semester, you now have to design programs that shift or are different enough, because you have so many repeat students that are coming back year after year.
Yeah.
And so that just becomes, it's a great problem to have.
It's a good problem to have, right? To design. I think it probably goes back to capacity also, right? Because then you have to expand, right?
Yeah.
To provide more and so forth. Of course, I'm not sure if this program falls under purview, but the Artificial Intelligence and Society Fellowship, is that something that you oversee?
We run the professional learning part of it. So on my team, we run career development and career transition programs for
the
scientists all along, from undergrads all the way to retirees. And so we have a set of in-house professional learning programs. So it's exactly what you were kind of talking about, science communication, scientists teaching science. So we have a lot of classes. I think we're running a leadership series right now. We're working on a DEIA series for the fall. We'll run a sustainable lab series in the spring. So we have a sort of a standard catalog of classes that we run. And then we're always trying to keep up with the sort of the latest and the greatest. The AI fellows, because they're here on our floor, they go to all of our PD. So so one of them is actually doing one of our scientists in residence program. Marjorie was a judge for our AI challenge. So we do take advantage of the scientists when they're on site to be judges, to help us think about
capacity, right?
Yeah, to help us think about this, because there's certain topic areas. I'm a biology teacher. I think Adrian's also, we're like all biology people. So we do take advantage of the content expertise of the academy broadly. But it's been great to have the AI fellows here.
Yeah, because I think the training component of this is actually my next question. In terms of civic science, public engagement, and all of that, that's something you provide training for the scientists to be able to do, right? When they're going on the ground or so forth, right?
Yeah, we do provide coursework. So we did a science communication, communicating your science to policymakers, communicating your science to any audience members. So that's all good. And scientists are, adults specifically, are very comfortable being in a teacher-based or a teacher-led class. Our residency programs are programs that take place online where scientists are actually putting these ideas into action. I think that's really where the magic happens. So if you have the sort of luxury to have that capacity to go and spend a semester in a middle school classroom or work with a team of kids, then practice really brings all of these ideas together. And I think you understand not just about how to communicate your science, but how to educate people on what it is that you as a scientist do, learn how to talk to people about how to build trust together. You become kind of an evangelist for the work, and you only really do that by learning your own voice and gaining confidence in it.
Yeah, is there interest from your members to do that?
Oh, we have a waiting list. We have a waiting list of schools. We have a waiting list of scientists. We have a waiting list of kids. We really have. We're not going to run out of kids. We're not going to run out of scientists. And the scientists are. We give them lots of options to volunteer, but they often want to bring kind of their whole selves to work as well. So they want to talk about their research, they want to talk about their labs, they want to talk about their backgrounds, their trainings. I can show you some of our science stories where they learn to talk about how they ended up where they are, and what drew them to science. And so they really, again, it's there's so many different ways that we can share our love and excitement for this work with people, but helping others tap into that themselves, I think is incredibly powerful. And it's part of what really draws me to work here, because I've got thousands of people that I can work with.
A lot of potential.
Yeah, so much potential. But it's also hard, right? You're sending, it's like sending with the lamb to slaughter, right? You're sending the scientist who's excited about working with middle schoolers into a classroom of middle schoolers. They will eat you alive.
That can be intimidating.
They will eat you alive.
Yes.
And so that's also part of it, is to understand that we want everybody to feel like this is a good experience, and that they, that's why we also work with the different sites that we work with to make sure that it's a soft landing. I see.
So you brought up scale earlier, right?
Yes.
So if you were able, got a funding, this magical funding appears, okay? That's not an issue anymore. What would you do first to address that scale problem?
I think I'd continue to upgrade our technology.
Okay.
So we have slowly but surely been upgrading our technology to be able to make to reduce the administrative burden on the staff.
Okay.
And we're getting, this is incredibly boring stuff. And so we're about to launch a new vendor payment system. If you're going to pay 200 scientists a year and you're going to take all their receipts and you're going to have to figure out their tax, all of that stuff, that takes significant bandwidth to be able to do it's so boring, and it's not what any of us want to be doing. So investing in our technology,
because that slows you down, right? Because if it's not effective there, it bogs all of you down,
all
right?
of us.
Because then you can't do what you actually should be doing.
And then people don't want to volunteer for you if it's a huge pain to be able to get paid.
Right.
People don't want to do a volunteer project where it takes you forever just to fill out the permission forms.
Right. So, man, I wish we could just keep talking. and this is, again, I always tell all the folk I talk to, this is a conversation. We'll continue it.
Yeah.
And this is an opening. I wanted to ask this question in terms of thinking necessity versus efficiency. With what you're doing, right? What you're doing, you can argue, is definitely necessary, right? The question is it sufficient, right? When you put it in the context of what's the challenges that are out there right now, right? You have climate change, you have artificial intelligence, right? It's a big thing now, and all those other misinformation, right? And all these things. Are you guys connecting the dots there in that dimension, and if so, how? And how are you thinking about it from that?
We have a couple priority areas. So climate change, human rights advocacy, those sort of pieces. AI and society, AI and safety versus AI and enthusiasm. What's on the different science exams? What do kids need to get into the next phase of life? All of those things we try to take into account. But again, if you kind of come back to the core piece of these are individuals that are choosing to do something. So it's a teacher that's choosing to have a scientist in their classroom. It's a high schooler who's choosing to work on this science fair program called the Junior Academy that we have. So you have to find ways to let people opt in and choose what they want to do. So that is another sort of design piece of it. So for scientists in residence, which is where with the teachers actually apply with a project. And then we match them with a scientist who has a shared interest.
I see.
Because we believe that the teacher needs to get out of it what they want to get out of it, right? They're the one that's asking for the capacity. So they might be interested, or their students may be interested. A nice matchup is the kids, these were fourth graders, the students, someone's grandmother had gotten cancer and they were really interested in understanding what cancer was. and the teacher needed to revamp her lesson on biology. So a great opportunity to mash up what is cancer, it's all cell bio, and they happen to be right next to Sloan Kettering. So we got them a bunch of scientists. So that really is driven by the teacher being able to say, this is what I want, this is what my kids want. And then we're able to create these kind of bespoke matches. Mm-hmm. In our high school program, the kids are able to work on basically whatever they want, but they have to do it in teams. So we put up an open innovation challenge for them. We put up a couple at a time. The kids opt into what challenge they want to do. And then they put up on our virtual discussion board, it's a healthy snacks challenge. I'm interested in making healthy snacks using insect flour. Who else wants to do this? Great. A million other kids want to work with insect flour. Great. We put them in teams, all of that stuff. And then we find them a scientist who want to work with it. So we believe that there's this sweet spot between agency and urgency. And that, all of these other programs that are trying to essentially chart paths for students to follow. So, these are frequently asked questions about this topic. So we're going to just sort of really document that path for kids to follow down. That's not what we're doing here. We're trying to say, we're going to, I'll use a kind of a metaphor that I like. You can be a carpenter or you can be a gardener. A carpenter is going to say, I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to attach these legs here, and I'm going to attach this here, and I'm going to build something from a set of blueprints. And again, this is a really hokey metaphor, but what we really try to do is we sort of try to say, what does the soil need to grow? And let it grow whatever it wants to grow. But what does this ecosystem, this sort of STEM ecosystem that we live in, what can we do to make sure that everything that grows in it has what they need to flourish, that they need to be nourished with? And that's when we start to get to scale. That's kind of the balance of these bespoke partnerships and these bespoke matches and stuff like that. And I think that's where the technology has allowed us to do things that we weren't able to do before. And so some things will always be slow and take, a lot of hand-holding. And some things can really take off with the right technological tools.
Wonderful connections there.
Yeah.
Share that. Thank you for this connecting the dots. Nice analogy, actually, on that, and great opening for continued discussions.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, Meghan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Why do stakeholders choose the Civic TV network?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, great question.
That's a good one.
That's a great question.
Civic TV. Top experts, great questions, new insights. Subscribe to the Civic TV network on YouTube and don't miss new insights from diverse stakeholders.